yesterday. There was no doubt in my mind it was for today. This morning, I want you to understand that the children of Israel left bondage. In the children of Israel's life, Egypt equaled bondage. They left bondage for a promised land. You know, we always think about that promised land as being, oh, it is full of all the good things. Guess what else that promised land was full of, church? Victory. When Israel crossed the threshold, they had to fight for it. God didn't just hand it to them. When they left Egypt, He didn't just hand them Canaan. They had to fight for it. They had to work for it. They had to suffer for it. And today, we read it through the histories of Scriptures that they made it to Canaan. But do you understand they would have made it a little sooner if they'd have just got their hard heads straightened out earlier? And there's something that, and it's very funny sometimes how God works. Funny, not like in comical, but ironic how God works sometimes. I was reading a totally different devotion at work, because that's when I read some stuff sometimes. And this verse of Scripture come up. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 10 says this. We'll get a hold of this right here. Get out of the physical. Get into the spiritual. It'll change your life. For the land whither thou goest in to possess it is not as the land of Egypt, from whence ye came out, where thou sowest thy seed and waterest it with thy foot, as a garden of herbs. But the land whither ye go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven, a land which the Lord thy God careth for. The eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year even unto the end of the year. What does that say? Verse 10. It's not like Egypt. It's not a desert. It's not a place where you got to turn the ground and irrigate water. There's mountains. Anybody ever been into a desert? It's flat. There's not. You might see a mountain, but the mountain's even bare. He said that's not what it's like. It's full of good things. It's ripe for the harvest. God told them right here, if they'd have listened, you ain't even really got to work for it. I'm taking care of it before you ever get there. He was taking them to a land of victory. You can be seated. Today, some of you need to begin your journey to victory. You need to start your path to Canaan. You're sitting in Egypt right now. You're sitting in the desert. You're sitting in the middle of bondage. The things of this world have you bound down. Can I tell them what you told me? People think of bondage and they think of the physical addictions. They think of the physical things that hold you bound. Let me tell you something. I'm not just talking about that this morning. That ain't the only kind of bondage there is in some of your lives. Some of you have sat in church day in and day out, week after week, and you've been sitting in bondage because the devil has control of your mind. He has you in fear. He has you in doubt. He has you in defeat. He has you depressed. He has you oppressed. Or did. That's right. That's what Canaan looks like right there. Freedom. Victory. It's time for the devil to not have God's people anymore. When the children of Israel were in Egypt, they were slaves. They couldn't move about freely. They couldn't worship God freely. They couldn't make their sacrifices. They couldn't serve God like God wanted them to serve Him because they didn't have freedom. When the time for victory came for them, when the time to leave Egypt came for them, if you've read the biblical account of that departure from Egypt, you will find out that when they left bondage, they took some of the good things with them. They looted the devil. Let me tell you something. The devil's given some of you some of the talents and some abilities. And Satan's had them wrapped up. Satan's had your talents, your time, and your abilities wrapped up. Some of you are about to walk out of Egypt. You're about to walk out of bondage. When you come out of that bondage, that talent that God gave you, that you've been misusing in bondage, that talent that God gave you that you've not been able to use while you've been in bondage, talent's coming with you. You're going to loot the devil. Just like the children of Israel stole they stole from the Egyptians in the mind's eye, not in God's eye. But they took and just absolutely looted the precious things of Egypt. Walked out and left the Egyptians standing there going, where's all my stuff? Some of you, in 6 months, are going to look back at your life. If you'll follow God, in 6 months, you're going to look back at your life and you're going to see where God has brought you from. And the devil's going to be standing there going, where's all my stuff? Where's those things that I had control of? And he's going to look, because look, devil can still see even when you're doing good. And he's going to look and he's going to go, there it is. But I can't touch it. The devil can't touch you in the promised land. As long as you'll walk in victory, as long as you'll walk in the light of Scripture, the devil can't have you. He'll try. He'll make his best effort to get you out of victory. He'll make his best effort. What happened? You know, if the children of Israel would have lived in Canaan and stayed where they were supposed to be and kept their eyes on God like they were supposed to, they wouldn't have had any problems. What did they do? They said, oh, they got a king. I want a king. Oh, look at this shiny God they got. This is awesome. I think I'll worship it. Some of them men got to look and go, well, them women over there look better than our women. Think I'll marry them. And they got their eyes off of God. They got their eyes off. They stopped following the principles of the old covenant. And they found themselves right back in bondage. Today I want to look at 4 major landmarks on the way from Egypt to Canaan. 4 major landmarks that the children of Israel had to go through. The first one was the Red Sea. And we're not going to turn there. We're not going to read that whole scripture. Probably most people in here are familiar with it, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of the Red Sea crossing. Pharaoh's behind them. Army. Unbeatable. This army cannot be defeated by this small group of people with little to no weaponry to defend themselves. Whatever they could pick up and throw at them, maybe. Some rocks. Not happening. They're not going to beat Pharaoh. In front of them is a large body of water, and they have no boat. They don't have the Titanic sitting in there to load up on. They don't have a large military personnel carrier sitting in the Red Sea to load up on and cross over. They're looking behind them, and there's defeat. They're looking in front of them. Guess what's there? Defeat. And they go, oh God, why have you brought us here to perish? We were better off in Egypt, where we at least had food and some little bit of safety. And now you've brought us here to die? Let me tell you what God did right then. Probably got mad, but after that, God said, just watch. Just watch. They come out of years and years and years of bondage in their life. They didn't really know how to trust God. Anybody disagree with that? The children of Israel didn't really know how to trust God. They hadn't trusted God in years, generations. They hadn't trusted God. God had to show them how to trust Him again. So with this army pressing down at their back, Moses said, y'all watch this. Watch my God. I don't believe for 1 minute that the water shifted and drained. I don't believe for 1 minute that some phenomenon of nature happened at that perfect time and parted the waters. What I believe is that there was some divine intervention. This is how I see it. And I'm not saying this is exactly what God did. I'm telling you how in my uneducated country mind, this is how I see it. I see this. I see God going, there's an army. He's going to kill my people, not on my watch. And it dries up. You know how God probably dried it up? He went, breathed life into the children of Israel. Gave them a way of escape. You're going to come out of your bondage. This is how he said, preacher, how does that apply to me? You're going to come out, some of you are going to come out of bondage. You're going to take a step out of bondage. And you're going to look up. Because how many knows when you finally take that step, you're just amazed at that step. And you're looking right here. And we're happy when we start walking out of bondage, right? We feel the victory because we're looking right here. And then all of a sudden we look up and we go, how am I going to get through that? And then we look behind us and it's chasing us. The bondage is chasing some of you. And you look up and you go, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Let me tell you what's going to happen in your life. God's going to go, there's the enemy. There's my child. Not on my watch. And you're going to pass through the Red Sea in your life. Some of you are at the point of walking out of Egypt. Some of you are at the point of walking across the Red Sea. It's time for you to walk off on dry land. Stop trying to figure out how to cross the sea on your own. You can't do it. It's too big. You can't get past your troubles. They're too big. They're too much. Stop figuring it out on your own. You'll fail. So you're a depressing preacher. No, I'm an honest preacher. You will fail. Get out of the way and let God move in your life. Because that's what needs to happen. Numbers chapter 11. The children of Israel came to a place, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce this Hebrew word, called Taberah. 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 They called that place Taberah because the fire of the Lord burned among them. Numbers chapter 11, verse 1 says this, and when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. Stop there a minute. You're complaining about your problems because you're coming out of bondage and you're walking forward. God's already brought you across. Understand, they'd already crossed the Red Sea. God's already proved his hand in your life. And now you're complaining because I don't know why they were complaining here, to be honest with you. I can't find in Scripture what they were complaining about. I read a commentary in one of my Bibles that couldn't answer what they were complaining about either. They didn't know. The commentator in there didn't have a clue. They were just complaining. If you're in a place in your life and you're going, I just don't think I want to do this no more, you're just complaining. Numbers chapter 11, verse 1 tells you God is displeased with that. God was displeased with his children. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses. Why didn't they cry to God? They didn't have their eyes on God. They had their eyes on man. That's another message. I'm going to move on. And when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. Some of you need a Taberah experience in your life. You need to go through your spiritual Taberah. You need to let the Lord burn some impurities out of your life. You're not getting your victory because you're still walking in defeat. You're not getting your victory because your eyes are still fixed on man and the impossible. Children of Israel wouldn't have been complaining if they hadn't had their eyes fixed on what was in front of them. If their eyes would have been here and not here. Do you understand this? Understand. The children of Israel could have walked all the way across there just like this. There's a bench right there. God knew there was a bench right there. All they had to do was follow the leading of God. But instead, they get their eyes right here on this bench, and they go, oh, God, why did you bring us out of Egypt? Are you serious? The children of Israel don't make any sense to me. I've said this oftentimes. This is what they do. Anybody ever been on a roller coaster? Nobody? Yeah. I've been on a roller coaster. I like roller coasters. But I don't like spiritual roller coasters. And that's where the children of Israel were at. They would go, here? Oh, God is awesome. God, why did you bring us here? Okay, Well, let me kill some of you and you'll understand again. So then God kills off some of them. They go, oh, God, you're great. Don't get to the point where God's got to do some deep spiritual burning in your life. Get rid of it yourself and get your eyes. Let me back up. When I say get rid of it yourself, I don't mean to do it yourself. Get rid of it before God's got to strong arm you a little bit. Anybody ever been strong armed by God? God will strong arm us. Now, He's not going to impose His will, but He will make our life so difficult that it's a lot better just to follow God. And the children of Israel here, they were just complaining. I don't know what they expected. This is what I think people expect. They expect to come out of 20 years of bondage in their life. I remember, I should have looked this up because I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was like 400 years they were in bondage. But some people want to come out of 20 years of bondage in their life. And they expect to walk out of that bondage and everything be okay. I think the children of Israel expected to walk out of bondage. Here's Egypt. Here's Canaan. They expected the good things just to happen. That's not how it works. You don't walk out of bondage after years and years of living your life for the devil, making a straight path to hell, and you walk out of that bondage and everything's perfect. I've been saved for a long time. Sometimes I've been like the children of Israel. But when you walk out of that bondage, when I walk out of things that have got a hold of me in my life, it ain't always easy, church. Walking out of bondage is not always easy. And we get complaining because I just don't think I'm going to do this anymore. Church just ain't for me. Well, let me tell you something. If you're in it for church, you're in it for the wrong reason anyway. You ain't in it for church. You ain't in it for this church. You ain't in it for me. You should be in it for God. If you're in it for any other reason, you are not out of bondage. And that's where the children of Israel were. They got God for a little bit, and they trusted Him. He proved Himself, and all of a sudden, something... I love this verse of Scripture because I don't know why they were complaining. And God got rid of some of them. That's what He had to do sometimes. He had to do some purification in the camp. Got some attention. And then they started walking again. It's time for some of you to walk through your spiritual top. It's time for you to get your eyes off of what has been. It's time for you to get your eyes off of what has been. It's time for you to get your eyes on what God has done and what God is going to do. Because some of you need some real victory. Numbers chapter 11, the next place. I understand. They went through a lot of places. The children of Israel passed through a lot of places. And I don't have time this morning to talk about all of them and what happened there. But here's what I have time for. What we're going to take time for. 2 more. The next one that they walked through, and I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try. I even have like the dictionary type pronunciation here so I can try this the right way. It's Kivroth Hatava. Kivroth Hatava. Numbers chapter 11, verse 31 through 35 says this. And there went forth a wind from the Lord. And let me stop. Let me give you a backup here. They started complaining again. Shocker. Understand, this is the same chapter. As a matter of fact, as soon as God does this, they start complaining because they don't have any meat. Oh, we had fish in Egypt. We don't have fish here. What are we going to eat? We don't have meat here. You know, God provided manna. He provided food, something that would nourish them and give them what they needed, but they weren't happy with what God was providing. Oh, my God, we want more. We want what we had in Egypt. We want some meat to chew on. We want a nice T-bone steak and well, probably not steak. I don't know about that, but fish out of the waters of Egypt. And God said, okay, a bunch of ungrateful children. Here's what I'm going to do. Verse 31 is what God does. And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quails from the sea and let them fall by the camp. As it were a day's journey on this side and as it were a day's journey on the other side. Do you know how far you could travel in a day? Think about how many quails this is. Round about the camp, and as if it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. A cubit is from here to here of a man. That's a cubit. 2 of them. 3, 4, 5 miles or better. God sent this wind and brought all these birds and laid them up. You want to meet? You got it. And the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers. And they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. They're thinking, oh, God gave us food. No, God's trying to teach you a lesson. And while the fish was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people. You know, if I read the story of the children of Israel, I understand how much patience God has. Because he should have knocked them off a long time ago and started again. But he's merciful. Yeah, we can laugh and we can look at that, but guess what? You're the same way. And it's his mercy and his grace that causes him not to do that. And the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And they called the name of that place Kivroth Hattava, because they buried the people that lusted. Because they buried the people that lusted. Some of you today, you've walked out of Egypt. You've walked out of your bondage. You've made it across the insurmountable Red Sea, the impassable Red Sea. God, you've let God move in your life, and he's made a way for you. You got a little complaining, and God fixed that. He showed you the way, and you followed. And now all of a sudden, things have gotten hard. This new walk, this new journey in your life has gotten hard in your life. And you remembered how easy it was in bondage. The Bible tells us about sin. The pleasure of sin is just for a season. It's just for a time that sin will be fun. There's going to come a time when sin will no longer be fun. But you remember how easy it was when you were in bondage. And you say, that doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense, but that's what we do. We think back to how easy life was, and then all of a sudden, we made some hard choices in our life, and we're standing here, and we're looking around, and we've lost friends. We've got relationships that are strained. Life got hard. Serving Jesus Christ is no bed of roses. If anybody tells you that, you need to just mark them off your list to listen to advice, because they're wrong. Serving Jesus ain't easy. If it was, everybody would do it. It's a whole lot easier today to follow into the path of bondage, because that's what most people are doing. But God has better plans for you. God had better plans for the children of Israel. He had a place promised for them of victory, a place where they didn't even really have to work much at it. God just provided. God's got that place for you too. He's got a place of victory for you. But what God had to do for the children of Israel, because they're looking back, they're saying, we had it good in Egypt. You know, to us, that doesn't make sense. Looking back, you were slaves and you had it good. Think about your life. Some of you have come out of some hard bondage in your life. But you look back to that time and look at some hard points that you've come to since then. Life was probably a little easier back then because you were living for yourself. Once you start living for God, don't stop. Don't quit. The children of Israel wanted to quit. How many times did they want to turn back? Pick another leader, turn back, and go back to Egypt. Because they'd rather be in bondage than work for the victory. I don't want to be at the place in my life where God sends a bunch of quail down. Where God says, okay, you want it? Here, big boy, have it. Take this. See how you like this. You know what God did in their life? It was hard. Parents, it's hard raising children. Sometimes you have to use some tough love to raise your kids. You have to sometimes let them make their own decisions in life and mess up. We don't want to do that. But it's biblical principle because it's exactly what God did with his children. It's exactly what God still does with his children. Sometimes he just lets them go. It's okay. God doesn't move. There's a Christian song that says that the rock doesn't move and his word is strong. God, Jesus Christ, is our rock. God is our rock. And he doesn't move. He never moved with the children of Israel. And he's not moving with you. But he will give you some very strong words sometimes. You might have God just kind of smack you in the face and say, listen, yeah, he'll do it. He'll hit you hard because he loves you. Have you ever had to spank your children because you love them? Ever had to punish your children because you love them? Ever had to take away their video games or ground them to their room? That wouldn't work with my oldest daughter. She loves to be grounded to a room. She'd be like this reading a book. Oh, this is awesome. I'm going to do this again. It wouldn't work. My youngest daughter, she'd go crazy in a room. You told her to go sit on her bed and not do anything, and she'd drive you crazy. But God punishes sometimes because he wants to change. You know what he did in the children of Israel? What we would call in a New Testament principle, sanctification. God had to sanctify the children of Israel. He had to get the old things out of their mind for good. And that was part of his process at this place that I'm not going to try to say again because I'll probably mess it up this time. But here with the quail, that's what he did. His goal was to rid their mind. Egypt was not as good as they thought it was. Egypt was nothing compared to what God had in store for them. Your bondage is nothing compared to what God has in store for you. It's time to get rid of the old longings. That's what that word lusted means. Something they longed for. They longed. It's not just about looking at it. They longed for it. They longed for that security they had in Egypt, that food they had. God said, y'all got to get rid of this. You just don't know how good it is because you ain't tasted it yet. And lastly, I want us to go to the end of Numbers chapter 13. This is probably one of the most pivotal points for the children of Israel. They had reached Canaan. They were just outside. They were just on the edge of the promised land. Just on the edge of the victory. And they sent spies in. They sent 12 spies in to spy the land. They were in there for 40 days, spying out all these places in Canaan. They come back out with an awesome report. Man, what God has told us is true. There's truth to it. It's bountiful. There's grapes. I don't know how big the grapes were, but I think probably as a kid and even as an adult sometimes I think about grapes. Huge. Took 2 or 3 people to carry them out, carry a vine of them out, Massive. I love grapes. Anybody else like grapes? I love grapes. Sitting. I can't imagine taking a grape and going. But this was huge in their life. They had never experienced something so wonderful. And I can't help but think as they're telling this, the people that they're listening to are going, oh yeah, this is good. This is good. And then they said, but. You know who says but? The devil. The devil's the one that says but in your life. This is great, but. Because when I'm not an English person, so I'm not even going to try to figure out what that's called. But that word is something to distract you in a sentence. It's something to turn you away from what's right here. This is good, but this is bad. And that's how I think about it. This, but this. It gets your mind off of whatever's before it. It can be good or it can be bad, but it gets your mind off of who but God. Right? Who but God, as the old song says, can do such things as these. Children of Israel had a but in their life. They said, who? This place is awesome, but the people are really big. I want you to think about something. Here they were at the edge of the promised land. God had brought them across the Red Sea. Before that, he had brought them out of Egypt, and they looted Egypt. He brought them across the Red Sea safely, dry ground. They didn't even get their sandals muddy. Just kept walking. They were thirsty. He provided them water out of a rock. They were hungry. He sent manna from heaven. But that God that did all that apparently was not big enough to defeat their enemies in their eyes. And they said, oh, we can't do this. Wait, let's just look at Numbers chapter 13, starting in verse 26. Let's just go down to chapter 14. I'm sorry. Verse 26 through 29, they just told them all the bad things, the good things and the bad things. Before that, in 21 through 25, they told them the good things. 26 through 29, they told them the bad things. Verse 14, here is where these people get hard-headed again. And all the congregation lifted up their voice. It doesn't say one or two. All the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And it doesn't say it in here in these words, but it says it. And the Lord, they murmured against God. And the whole congregation said unto him, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us into this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, let us make a captain. They had the greatest leader ever, and they wanted the captain. Now, if you ain't been in the military, you ain't been in law enforcement, you may not understand what I'm about to say. They had the highest ranking general. They had the chief. They had the sheriff. And instead of following somebody that knew what they were doing, they wanted the captain. They wanted the low-level leader. They wanted somebody that would listen to them and do what they wanted to do. I know that's probably not in the original translation what that word means there, but I want to bring it up to some real life and how this affects us. Let us make a captain. Let us make a captain. Let us set somebody in leadership that they'll take us back to Egypt. You know what? If they'd have done that, if God would have allowed them to do that, and they'd have done that, they'd have never made it back to Egypt. I don't believe they would have. They couldn't make it back across what they did without God. They would have fallen. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their face before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. They had reached the edge of the promised land. They were right there at their place of victory. They had come through. God had brought them through all of these things. And they were right here, and all they had to do was step out in faith. And they said, we can't do that. And they lost the promised land. Some of them lost their victory forever because they would die in the wilderness. You know, there's a little part of that story we often miss. God condemns them to the wilderness. We know that. But there's a little part in there we often miss. Do you know they tried on their own? After they turned their back on God and they saw how that was going to work out for them, they tried on their own, and God destroyed them in battle. He allowed the enemy to destroy them. You can't make it without God. There's two words I like to say sometimes. But God. The devil tells you you're defeated, but God says you're victorious. The devil tells you you're too dumb, but God tells you, no, you're not. The devil tells you you can't do it, but God tells you he's right, but I can help you do it. We've got to get our eyes off of this world. We've got to get our eyes fixed on Jesus. The children of Israel, because of their disobedience, because they refused to follow God into the promised land. This God that had put protection about them, that had led them, refused to follow him into the promised land. They were condemned to wander the wilderness. 1 year for every day that the spies were in the land. It was 40 years they were set to wander in that wilderness. And finally, they got their hard heads out of the way and they followed God and they made it to their victory. But some of them didn't make it. Some of them had their last chance. Today, some of you may be standing right at the gates of Canaan. you may be standing right at the point of your victory. You got two choices. You can trust God and go forward, and He'll take you all the way in. Or you can walk away and keep walking in circles. How many times have we seen people, some of the older Christians in here that have followed God your whole life, throughout your life, how many times have you seen people that are just walking circles with God? They're just wondering. Every once in a while they get back close to Canaan, and they just keep walking. It's time to stop walking. It's time to stop wandering in the wilderness. It's time to walk in to Canaan. Stand with me today. I don't know where you're at in your journey. Some of you may, even though you're strong Christians, you may have made your way into Canaan. You may have found your way into that promised land. Some of you have not. Some of you have not found your way into Canaan. You have tried on your own, and the devil has defeated you. Today, I'm not one of those preachers that say, I'm prophesying to somebody. No, I'm just telling you the truth right now. God's tugging on your heart. You know it. You felt it. Some of you have yielded, some of you have not. He's ready to take you into Canaan. He'll help you across that Red Sea. He'll help you through that place to get you past your lust for yesterday. And He will take you into a place of victory. John 16:33 says this, "These things have I spoken unto you, that ye might have peace. In this world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." He's overcome it already. The victory's already there. You might have to walk through some stuff. You might have to find your way through some stuff. He's already promised you victory. You just got to walk into it. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 57. This is what I want every person that walks out of here today. I want this to be your anthem. Don't walk out here today unless you can make this your anthem. It says, "But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Today, some of you have walked through some things. Some of you have passed through some stuff in your life. You're walking through some things right now. I'm here to tell you today that He'll bring you through. He'll get you through, won't He, Kathy? He'll get you through. God's faithful. And it's time that you take that first step today. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Today, if you're in the need of walking into Canaan, we're going to sing this song. And I want you to find your place of victory today.